Net favorability of the topic of AI is negative 20%, worse than President Donald Trump and the Republican Party. Weirdly, usage is up.
People hate AI, but they cannot stop using it.
Here's the thing about what's going on with AI right now. Only 18% of people ages 14 to 29, the young people in the United States, have positive, hopeful sentiment about AI in general. I saw another study, 46% of American households feel negative toward AI, only 26% are positive. And of course, the study from a few weeks ago that we saw, net favorability of the topic of AI is negative 20%, worse than U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement President Donald Trump, former Vice President Kamala Harris, and the Republican Party. Worse than all of those topics. But here's the thing that we're going to talk about in this episode. 57% of survey respondents say that the risks outweigh the benefits. And weirdly, usage is up from 48% of Americans using AI every day to 56% in March of this year. So there's a disconnect here.
It seems people hate AI, but they cannot stop using it. So there's something very weird going on. And today we're going to unpack it on this episode. Something very important before we talk about this backlash is to sort of see what are the factors contributing to it, right? And we have 6 of them. First of all, the word that is giving name to this podcast, slop. It was the word of the year for 2025. You got companies facing backlash, right? McDonald's Netherlands released an ad for Christmas that was made with AI. They had to pull it off because people freak out. Blue Apron, they went viral after their AI ad copy was just complete gibberish. Guns N' Roses, they released a video made with AI. You go to the comments in YouTube, people despise it. So it's not just like, I wish I could tell you it's about ads, it's about some videos and that's it. But the thing is, AI right now, it's everywhere. I was trying to buy an automated cat feeder for Ramon the other day because he figured out the one I got. And it was impossible to get one that was not connecting to the internet, getting my data, I don't want an AI-powered cat feeder. I want a cat feeder where my cat cannot steal food.
Yeah, and the slop doesn't just stay on your traditional channels. Like your social media feed is full of slop no matter what you're looking at. It's all synthetic. And for some reason, the brands think this is what people want, and they really don't. So they're just getting so irritated that as they scroll, they're just seeing worse and worse and worse content day by day.
But the thing is, when it starts permeating in our life, how we support ourselves, our loved ones, right? And this is when in the workplace, you get those AI hackathons. Your boss is telling you to use AI, not really giving you a training or anything. It's more of a figure it out. But AI is mandatory, right? We need to check if you're using AI. Is this all hands AI adapt or be left behind narrative that it's clearly not resonating with people, especially as we get more and more layoffs, as we're seeing, right? In 2025, companies started citing AI as the reason for 55,000 job cuts, which is 12 times the number just 2 years earlier. And I was there in 2024. It was bad. We had big social media companies, consulting, etc. The list goes on. You go on the news, just type AI layoffs, AI efficiencies, and there's a company laying off someone this week. So we're going to get into the nuance, right? Because right now the sentiment is AI sucks. Stay here because it's not all bad. Last but not least, something that is especially resonating with Zoomers, right? Which is the cost into the environment. 71% of folks in the U.S. are opposing to the constructions of an AI data center in the local area. 48% are strongly opposed to the point that this is now becoming a major topic on the upcoming U.S. elections. AI data centers is going to be one of the major things along with the economy. So that's how important it is right now.
A lot of people are concerned about the environmental impacts. A lot of people are concerned, just like NIMBYism, like not in my backyard. A lot of people are pushing back against the idea that these are job creators, right? So there's just like a lot of people who are strongly against the run at data centers.
Did you know, Kate, actually, I got something for you, which is a record number of data centers were canceled in the first quarter of 2026 because of community resistance, right? So this is impacting everyday people. It's not just in LinkedIn or in Twitter. This is already AI being everywhere. Just a few days ago, the Pope released a 42,000-word manifesto calling for disarming AI. So whatever your opinion on religion, on the institution, the Pope is talking about AI. I did not have that on my bingo for this year.
It's a topic that crosses every single demographic, including the Pope. Even just electricity costs going up is something that people are balking against.
Memory getting more expensive.
Yes. Even like, are we losing the ability to think for ourselves?
And there's a topic that is really important, but I want to know your opinion. I'm not going to talk about it. We'll save it for later in the episode. So all those of you that are parents, I think you're going to be very interested in this one, which is the impact on kids that AI has. Don't tell me right now, Kate. Let's hold it.
Yeah, I will hold that for later because it's near and dear to my heart as the parent of children. But before we get there, let's kind of talk about how we want to frame all of this, right? There's folks from every walk of life, every demographic, every point of view, all coming to the side of the fact that they hate AI. Honestly, sometimes you and I do too, but it's not the technology that we hate. It's everything that surrounds this technology and everything that it has come to represent. So what do I mean by that? There's this disconnect between these billionaire AI leaders who have been focusing on building AGI, right? It's theoretical superintelligence to like run the world. And meanwhile, there's, everyday people who are worried about their paycheck and their power bill. There's this huge wealth gap that AI may just expand even further. And, it's really unpalatable to hear tech billionaires talking about how do we want to not create a underclass in this country, probably globally, of people. There's going to be many fewer haves and many more have-nots. And so that's something that people really like fundamentally, if they have absorbed that talking point, they really take it to heart. And then at the same time, like as if that wasn't enough, there's all these layoffs going on. So those same billionaires who are leading this charge and running maybe too quickly at the technology, they're using AI as an excuse to cut tens of thousands of jobs. Mark Zuckerberg just did this week. It creates such a murky space where you don't know who to believe. And both things are true. Some jobs are being automated. CEOs are using it as an excuse to cut their bottom line. All the while, they are moving towards this future where none of us can be secure in our future careers. And so there's a lot there to just like really chew on and really hate. Don't you think?
I don't even know how to start acknowledging all of this, right?
It's gross.
It is supposedly technology was here to improve people's lives, right? So there's this disconnect. If I cannot buy food for my kids, definitely I do not care about AGI. I do not care about revolutionizing anything because my kid's hungry. So that's number one. Then there's number two, which is remember the times where we could just focus on hating our jobs and that's it. Now we go to a job, we get exploited. Any day could be your last day. No protections. You're told adapt or be left behind, but then you adapt and the layoffs happen anyway. So last but not least, what I noticed when we have this conversation is the lack of empathy, right? Because again, we know business layoffs have been happening since the beginning of time, especially here in the US with work at will. Europe, other countries, they have more protections. But in the US, it's like basically you could be fired today and sayonara, right? Mm-hmm. But the way they communicate, right? Some CEOs lay off 10% of their workforce, and the day before, they're in Coachella taking selfies. Facebook laying off people, and Mark Zuckerberg showing up in Seattle with a gigantic yacht. And again, I'm not knocking on going to festivals or having a big boat, but I would say, dude, we know you don't care, but at least have some sort of decency.
Care.
Pretend. And California, the largest economy in the U.S., they just signed Executive Order N626. We're going to put it on the description for those that are interested in going further into this, which in a way is recognizing rules for work. As we have them right now, we're not written for this scenario. And I think this is important. Correct me if I'm wrong, or if you're in the comments and you know something that I'm missing out. But I think it's the first regulation of this kind in a state in the US.
Okay, so one person that I listen to very carefully on this topic is Scott Galloway, because he talks a lot about the transfer of wealth between older and younger generations and how it puts young people at a disadvantage. And so I want to play a quote from him from the Diary of a CEO podcast right now.
Your view of AI is directly correlated to your wealth. Wealthy people look at AI as something that's fueling their portfolios. But if you're an average middle class person, what you may see is that your electricity bills have gone up and you don't even have access to invest in these companies.
That's not a fringe take, right? He's this NYU marketing professor. He talks and writes all the time about big tech. But like, once you hear it, the backlash stops being confusing. It starts to make perfect sense. Like, the people who are absorbing these costs are the ones who are the most out of sorts about it, and rightfully so. And the first one is the young. And so you mentioned at the top of the episode, it's graduation season, commencement speeches are happening all over the place. And anytime AI is being brought up at all, people are booing loudly in the stands. Eric Schmidt, the founder of Google, was giving a commencement speech. He was booed brutally for talking about AI. And then another one in Florida that we heard about, she talked about how AI is the next industrial revolution and got booed off the stage. So there is a big disconnect between the older generations and how they see positivity in this technology and the younger generations who only see negative, who are angry that it's being shoved down their throats. There's a lot to unpack here, right? For the very young, of which I have, the prefrontal cortex, as we know, is not fully formed until the age of 25 or something like that?
25.
When you look at a stat like 3 in 4 teens are using AI as companions right now, and only 30%, 37% of parents know, that is breaking their brains. Full stop. They are leaning into sycophantic digital relationships, and they're using those to grow up. It's just on its face, it's really not a good thing for youth, for very young people. And then you have a few instances of self-harm that have happened in the last couple of years because of these sycophantic relationships that are like, they get broken and the bots tell the children to do very bad and harmful things. That is just full stop, like, get rid of it. Like, we need a ban on kids using this technology as friends. It's really, really harmful. And then there's like the other end of it, like college graduates. They're being told to celebrate a technology that is making their entrance into society, the entrance into their career, very uncertain. At the same time, and I think you mentioned it earlier, the other thing that they're really worried about, and rightly so, is the environment of the planet that they're going to move into in their adult lives. Both of those issues are interconnected, and so they have a lot to boo, I think, is what I'd say about that.
So when we talk about kids booing, on one end, there's a loneliness crisis and kids are resorting to AI to build these relationships. And the other day, I had a conversation with someone that literally had a relationship with ChatGPT, and it was super shocking. And it kind of left me a bit rocked because it was my first time interacting with someone that literally got emotional talking about their conversation with ChatGPT. At that, I cannot even make jokes, right? It's scary because it shows you it exists, and this is smart people, went to college, etc. Still happens. No one is immune. So we got that, especially when you're a kid, right? Because at the end of the day, we live life. At least we can differentiate a little, but kids are growing with this being normalized. You got that. You got the kind of like social contract with work where you're supposed to go to school, study, invest, work there.
Get it
off, and then you do better life. That's the American dream. And that seems to be broken right now. So they have every right to be angry. But is this all? Because I think on top of this, there are even more factors.
Yeah. Another group of people, and I mentioned this a little bit earlier when I mentioned this ugly little world called the underclass. There's average people, right? You are disadvantaged because all this stuff is happening in the private sector. You don't get to vote on whether there's a data center in your community. You didn't get to vote on, whether AI was coming into your workplace and taking your job away. The economy in this country is not so great right now. You're paying even higher power bills because of the infrastructure being built on a grid that you didn't vote for technology that you don't want. It's just a feeling of overwhelming powerlessness, and that this wave is sort of rolling over our society, but that it's not just ideological, it's material to people because it increases their bills and it removes choice from their lives. As you know, in the United States, we love choice. We love to be able to like make our own way, and this feels like a tsunami coming toward people that they cannot stop and cannot find their way out of. So if the average person is stuck here, it's the wealthy and the established people, as Scott Galloway mentioned, who are set to, as per usual, gain from this innovation, right? They have the skills. If they're senior in their jobs, they have the networks, they've accumulated some capital. AI just simply makes them faster, more powerful, and it just widens that gap. And so I think what he says, right, is that what people are coming to the realization of is that AI was not built for everyone. It was built for the wealthy and the established, and they are going to continue to do well regardless of what happens.
That's a strong statement. I do agree because there is this feeling of we made, of course, it's the feeling of we made a decision for you that affects everything you care about in life, everything you built in life, everything you work hard for. Deal with it. We'll continue making money, and that's it. So I think that's what these speakers are failing to read through many times because they're not used to pushback, right? It's all white dudes over 40 that are very used to hearing, yes, that's a great idea. That's why they love AI. For the regular people, I mean, I'm going to ask people in the comments, how many of you have tried buying a computer in the last month? Check out the prices. Like, again, it's affecting everything. At a time where everybody's struggling with money, there's this thing that not only makes everything more expensive, but also is directly conflicting with your ability to make money. As revolutionary as AI is, here's some other things that were deemed revolutionary at the time. Asbestos for construction, margarine as a replacement to butter, and then DDT, which I don't remember what was the thing it was good for, but they call it revolutionary too. We all know how that went, right? So
that's very dark, but yes, but I agree.
So here's what's not helping, right? The lack of regulation leaves a vacuum in which folks are not benefiting, and that's only going to cause more pushback, which we can see on town halls, people organizing.
Yeah.
You can see on trending videos on YouTube. They talk more about this backlash. When you see a nonprofit making a video about a data center in Georgia, and then Federal Intelligence Networks, as shown by Wired Magazine, are researching that as a potential threat vector, which is nuts. We live in a democracy. People should say, I want my water to be okay for my kids, right? But here's the funny thing. 70% of the people in the US think AI is moving too fast. And this, you could be a Democrat, you could be a Republican, conservative, super liberal. 68% of Republicans feel this way, 77% of Democrats. So this is bringing people together at a time that we cannot even agree on the shoes of an Eminem. So I think that's telling you something is worth paying attention to. At a time where we cannot agree on absolutely anything, this is bringing everyone together.
Yeah, you mentioned the rush to implement, and I would posit that it might not only be bad for society, but it might be bad for the development of the technology as well. Like when the why gets skipped, you get products that could potentially harm people. One of the things is the labs poaching talent from academia. We've talked about this in the past. People who are supposed to, work inside of institutions and do the slow, rigorous work of understanding how these systems work, they are now employed for millions of dollars at the labs rushing to ship because they're in competition with each other. And not to pile on, but don't forget that 3 of the leading labs are going for IPO this year. That being OpenAI, Elon Musk's conglomeration of technologies and companies, and Anthropic. And they need to be sure that they have a product that they can take to market and then immediately make money. Because if they don't, that's now taking all the capital they've raised and then all this investor value that's going to be infused into, their organizations and flushing it down the tubes if they're not able to make that revenue back. So the rush is just as risky for them as it is for society. I just think that maybe they don't care.
They do not care about the conversation. I feel like once they start realizing, once this kind of like manosphere FOMO starts going away because they need to make money, they're going to realize that also not having clear rules is not good for any business, right? Like businesses love predictability. If this is a Wild West, you don't have predictability. And I think that's the honest version, what you say, of a conversation that it seems like none of these big cheerleaders for AI want to have. And one thing that's worked for me, because here's like, I like being honest with folks that listen to the podcast. I think Slop Word is a podcast that we both agree. We are transparent, right, on things we like, what we do not like. It's not all bad. It's not all good. I like things about using AI. Some software with the APIs, it makes a world of different things like keyword research. Again, it's a very useful tool that solves an actual problem. And here for me is the key to everything, which is first principles. That is asking yourself, what's the problem to solve here? No, what's the tool, but what's the problem we're trying to solve? Because if you cannot articulate what you're trying to solve, you're just throwing a spaghetti at the wall, trying to see what sticks, and creating Slop.
Yeah. And, we get in the comments a lot of the time like, well, okay, great. I'm glad you think that this is all sloppy and a big mess. What should I do about it? And I agree with you. I mean, I use AI every day. It amazes me. It solves my problems, right? But I think full rejection is not going to be the right approach here. And I think shaping your own philosophy and shaping your own use cases and understanding for you what it makes sense to use AI for and what it does not is the entire equation. Depending upon your role, what type of creative you produce, what type of strategy thinking you do, how you communicate, all of those things you need to just think very deeply about them right now, because the truth of the matter is that you are going to be using this technology in the foreseeable future. It just is. Like, I fully believe that there will actually be no rejection. It will just be that the people who are the most, and rightly so, concerned will be able to articulate that concern in a better way and be able to use these tools to their own benefit as opposed to feeling at risk. And that's the only thing that we can all do, is sort of use the tools to our own benefit, to make ourselves better, to make ourselves richer, to make ourselves more productive, and to help the world.
And I think there are two things that are what could bring the temperature down and allow us to focus on what's actually the thing that's going to create benefit, which is number one, regulation. Again, we need predictability. This is going to help both everyday folks. It's also going to help the companies and create a sustainable economy where we don't go through a crash next year because it was just reckless how this was implemented. So that's number one, regulation. Number two, education. There's lots of great people in this space that are educating folks so they understand, right? Like taking the time to explain to folks, AI doesn't have feelings. It's not your friend. It's not your enemy. It's just an algorithm, in a stochastic parrot, as they say. But I think once we start having the real conversations with a big beef if in the ones, the temperature will go down, but we need to make sure that everybody that is part of this AI, those that provided the training data, etc., if this is not fair, if the same people keeps winning, the backlash is only going to get bigger, because when you start getting your hand on people's pocket, especially, it's not my first economical crisis. I'm from Argentina. I was born with hyperinflation. So when people feel, these thought leaders, their visionaries are putting their hand in your pocket and getting your money, of course it's going to make them angry, like it would make you or me or anyone. So I think while this is a very nuanced topic, there are solutions that are very clear. What we need to find out is where there's any will from those that regulate to work with people, because people are being very clear on what they want.
Well, I'm not one to predict what the current administration or next whatever it may be will do with regulation. That's not something that I feel like I have much control over. But one thing that I do have a certain amount of influence over is at the corporate level, at the company level. If you are a leader at your company, you need to provide good, solid, foundational training and education for your people. That is one thing that you can do to really ameliorate this problem, because once people know I can experiment and play, I can become better at my job, I can feel confidence and dominance over this technology, they are going to have a better career in the future. And so that is one thing, if you are in a decision-making role at a company, that you can do to really help us along as a society in the middle of this messy mess.
Yep, absolutely. From my end, I've been working with first generation students, folks graduating from the foster care space, in introducing them to the tools and helping them understand the technology. And at least that makes me feel better, right? Because I feel that's something that I can actually have some influence on. It's very rewarding. And I think that's how you get people to see the benefit, but we still need a lot of things to change. I don't think just explaining people how it works is going to change anything. Now, this is a topic that is super complicated. It's nuanced, we cannot be all bad, all good. Yeah. But Kate, I understand you got something that goes a little bit deeper into this conversation, right?
We'll link to my newsletter in the notes. I have a piece about this, as well as a number of nuanced takes about some of the topics we cover on this podcast. So have a read if you want.
Did we omit anything? Is there anything you'd add? How do you feel about it? Has AI impacted you personally, for good or for bad? We want to hear it, because your feedback is super helpful for us to take a pulse, right? Otherwise, just anecdotal evidence of what we see on the daily basis and news clippings. Now, speaking of AI-first companies innovating and laying off people, we got a video on what happened with Klarna decided to go AI first. And as you might expect, things did not go exactly as planned. So I would recommend, if you want to go further into this topic, continue watching our videos, because every week we do our best to cover all AI news, pull up the receipts to see what's right, what's wrong, and what's complex. And that's it. So we love you. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you next Saturday.